wanted to take a look at Marvell Technologies, aka Marvell Tech. Marvell Technologies Stock, MRVL is the ticker symbol there. And this is a stock that's gotten caught up similarly with Nvidia. Unfortunately, it's no Nvidia. Marvell Tech stock has risen up significantly over the past couple months, but lately has dropped like a rock. Where do I expect it to go? It's trading about $60 last time I looked. I wouldn't touch this thing until it was about 20. And I wouldn't probably touch it until I saw some metrics that improved significantly. This is not a company that is high performing. It would be a high gamble. And I think a lot of people got involved in this stock, Marvell Tech stock, simply because Nvidia. Now, Nvidia is a strong performer with high margins. Marvell stock, up until this latest quarter, was pushing negative margins. So when you look at this, when you see how it got caught up and individuals are sitting there buying into this, thinking that the semiconductors are just going to keep going, this is one where I think people got caught off. I'm looking, when I invest in a stock myself, I'm looking for continuously increasing revenues, solid margins. I want to see some kind of monopoly. I want to see continued increase in earnings. Marvell stock, even though it's run up like it has, not the kind of stock I would get involved in. Now, their latest conference call, they did have some positive notes in there. In fact, the conference call was relatively solid from that perspective, but there's still a lot of hangups that I think that Marvell stock is overpriced at 60. 20 to 30 would be an interesting buy, but they would still have to improve a lot of their metrics. Let's jump in. I want to take a look at what I'm looking at with regard to Marvell stock. MRVL stock is the ticker symbol. Let's jump in. Here is a look at MRVL stock, and realistically, this is ugly. Not even going to lie, and I hope you're not involved in this because I actually think it's got more downside to go. Again, for me, it's the metrics, but there's so much more. You can't just invest in one stock and thinking, oh, look, let's look at these metrics. These are awesome. Let's jump in. You've got to look at the entire industry. You have to look at the entire economy. When it comes to Marvell Tech stock, they got caught up with Nvidia, obviously, as you can see with the run-up since mid last year all the way up, pushing as high as it did, chopping down by 50% in a short period of time. Since actually, very tail end of December when we saw the sort of close absolute high of the markets. Since then, it's been all downhill. All right, so what's going on? First, the economy in general is slowing down. And we're seeing broad-based selling across the board with, even today, the bigger, more traditional stocks outside of the technology sector. Those sell-offs are because of a slowing economy. So you're going to see stocks moving lower regardless within this. This isn't, for me, the time to be getting involved in a lot of these stocks, although I think the dust will settle. At this point, we should see some progress moving forward. Semiconductors. Nvidia shot up like a rocket, and everybody rushed into the last involved in that didn't move just yet, hoping to catch some of Nvidia's love. Now Nvidia's done. So Marvell stock, Marvell Technologies stock, of course, would be selling off as much. Now their metrics themselves don't really kind of merit it being a good buy anyway. This is a company that I think is missing on many factors. Margins are going to be one of them. Here is their quarterly revenue. Q4 printed 1.82, which is a solid increase. And that's something that's really important. Keep a look at this, the quarterly revenue, because we're going to now move to gross margins. Actually, gross margins were a pretty solid print. Now, I've done a couple semiconductor stocks where I've looked at some of these. Obviously, I cover Nvidia. I own Broadcom. I did super microcomputer stock, SMCI stock, previously as well. Gross margins for SMCI stock are like 11%. So at 46%, this is pretty solid. But one of the things to look at, remember the previous chart with regard to revenue, they didn't really gain too much from Q2 to Q4 with regards to gross margins, even though they saw a big jump in revenue. Now, there should be economies of scale. Should. In this case, there was not, and that should be an alarm. Now, when we move further down the balance sheet or the financial statements, you can see operating margins are improving. 12.3% is a huge improvement over the negatives. Then we get net margins up to 11%. Not bad, actually. There's some room to grow there. If they hit their revenue gains, we should see some solid opportunities there. But I still think $60 for Marvell Technologies stock is a bit rich. Now, earnings per share printed 60 cents for Q4. Projected revenue, $8.2 billion for 2025, which would be a solid jump from the 5.8. Should they be able to do that? If you look at 2024 to 2026, they're nearly looking to double it. AI is a big story, and of course with Marvell Technologies, that's not all they're about. So looking at this, there's going to be significant increases in revenue. Important. Go back to economies of scale with gross margins. Can they push their gross margins to higher numbers? Maybe a 10, 15, 20% more in gross margins. That starts to trickle down to your through your operating margins and net margins and free cash flow. Always what we're looking for when it comes to investing. 281 projected earnings per share for Marvell Technologies. That is what I really want to focus on, more so than the 369 moving down the road, but still that's a big jump there as well. So this could be a long-term opportunity, but not at this price. Treasury yield, call it about 4.25% at this point. So you get a lot of selling coming in from a lot of what's going on with the economy slowing, Nvidia, tariffs. There's a lot going on. The stock market is off. Technology stocks, NASDAQ is down 13.5%, almost 14% since February 18th, 19th, its peak. That's a huge drop. Now, the more traditional stocks, the Dow and S&P 500, down about 8% for those. So the more traditional stocks are lagging somewhat in the fall. This fall is really the tech stocks. But we got to look at the economy. Even today, the Dow fell more so than tech stocks, and it's because of the economy more so, which would affect the traditional stocks. So at 281, it's about 67.5 for Marvell stock price, MRVL stock price. Your yield, you take the 281, you divide that over top of the 67.75, that gets you 4.14%. We go back to the treasury yield, trading at about 4.3, 4.25, depending on the hour at this point, depending on the tariff situation. Almost. What if this stock drops to 50? Now all of a sudden we're starting to see some real interesting yields. If they can maintain that revenue growth because of their AI demand, keeping their more traditional revenue gains as well, that becomes a lot more interesting. Once you drop that price by about $10, you start to see some real value. If we got down to 50, which is actually about $18, which would be about 30%, 25%, you'd see some big increase in Marvell stock yield. That would be interesting. I expect we're going to see a lot more selling in the future over the course of the next several months. By the end of May, the economy and the stock market are not going to look the same. The chaos, pure chaos, is coming out of Washington, D.C. By design or simply because that's just the way things are. That's not an investment area or an environment where investors can reasonably predict the future. And because of that, we're seeing a lot of selling coming in. So Marvell Technologies stock could easily see increased selling going through. What's going to happen with Nvidia? That's really kind of a big play on that. If we see more selling in Nvidia, certainly MRVL stock will go much lower, then your yield gets a lot more attractive. Looking at the chart, I would not be one to be buying the dip. I'm moving in different directions. I'm playing a lot of volatility trades right now, playing a lot of treasury bond fund investments right now, not looking to buy anything new. We need to see this level out, and then we need to assess what actually is going on with the economy. How's the Federal Reserve going to react? And then, okay, fine, we're going to see some movement forward with the economy. The chaos might have settled down, maybe, doubtful, we'll see. From there, Marvell stock, Marvell Technologies stock could be an interesting buy. But even at these prices, even though it's dropped from 125 down to 67.75, I think it's still a bit rich, and then we're going to see Marvell Technologies stock moving lower. Make sure to follow me along on my Substack if you want to kind of keep tabs with all these things. I've got my big email that I send out on the weekends, kind of encompassing what's going on with the investment world in general, more broad-based, looking at the economy, breaking down economic indicators and how they affect the stock market. And I do break down, of course, the semiconductors. I do own Broadcom, so that's something I focus on a great deal. We'll see you in the next video.